Will Apple Arcade be a game changer for the game developers? I'm Tonya Hall for ZDNet and Tech Republic, and joining me is Bekah Saltsman, co-founder and CEO at Finji. Welcome, Bekah.
Hello.
What kind of work does Finji do?
We are a small independent game development studio, and in video games, we're sort of called a micropublisher. So we kind of do both. We're a development studio, and we take small games, or not small games, big games from sort of smaller development teams and help bring those to market.
Apple recently had a special event, as they do, and their big announcements were that they are in the service business. And one of those announcements was Apple Arcade. What is Arcade, and what is a game changer, and why would that be a game changer for publishers?
Apple Arcade is a subscription service for premium games. And considering that they've been in like the mobile market for so long, and a lot of their games are sort of kind of free to play games, so you can get them for free and then, sort of usually pay for in-app purchases. The thing that they've announced is kind of the opposite of that. And for us specifically, we make big games. We make console games, even in the indie space. My last title came out on all three consoles, plus like Steam, GOG, like these larger gaming platforms. So kind of the partnership that we have is I'm taking my big games to a more mobile audience, but under a subscription service.
What is the process for combining storytelling and technology to actually create a game? Are there many people who are good at both, or does it usually require specialists in each area?
It kind of depends on the team, to be perfectly honest. For my team specifically, we refer to ourselves as Swiss Army knives. And that's because a lot of people on my teams operate in a lot of different roles. But still in games, it's pretty highly specialized. I have an art director. I have an audio director. Narrative sometimes gets pushed around a bit, but for larger teams, there's just somebody who works on narrative. And then obviously in engineering, but when you get into engineering, you're messing around in shaders and you're messing around in like VFX. And then we just have like our general engineer, which sometimes is different from the design engineer.
What are the pros and cons of being a smaller firm?
The cons are our budgets are tiny. We work with very small teams, and that puts a lot of constraints on our design process. For our game specifically, when we started, we were basically like a team of 4.5-ish, which meant that with our game, we're building it's a post-apocalyptic road trip across North America. So the setting is literally the United States. So you could build forever. You could fill this whole world with like all of our American trash, basically, which is impossible for a large team and even more impossible for a small team. So the kind of constraints that we have to put on our design is how can we accomplish this beautiful experience, but with very few people. And that usually comes out especially in art. How can we make do with not a lot? How can we make it as stylish as possible? And on top of that, how can we do it so a screenshot does like half of my marketing? I want my games to look like nothing else because I don't have $1 million, marketing budget. So a lot of it is just being very clever about kind of the engines that we use, getting the best people for the job and the best people who want to make something that can then kind of stand on its own two legs without relying on other games to sort of push it along.
How should game developers prepare when they think they're ready to approach a publisher? What attributes do they need to have? I mean, what makes for the best collaborations?
I could literally shout about this forever. I just did a talk at GDC last week. Actually, this is probably 2 weeks ago. I've been traveling for a long time. Basically about the pitch process. So if you're going to approach a publisher specifically, we have this thing called a vertical slice. And that is basically like a full experience of the game, the full core game mechanic or game loop. Because you want to prove to the person you're talking to, who generally has the money, that this game is amazing and it's really sticky. And the gameplay and core mechanic is going to sell, but not in like a mass market sort of way, because there's games literally for every human alive on earth. There's something for you. But does the person that you're pitching to have sort of the same vision or goals, and you sort of need to prove that with your core mechanic and game loop. So having a really polished vertical slice, this is what the game is going to feel like when it's done. But also just kind of understanding the place at which your interests overlap. Um, when when I approach, for example, a console partner or even somebody like Apple, I'm not going in there with this like really high vision of what this game could possibly be. I focus very directly on, this is what you want to do, and this is what I want to do, and where are the points that those goals overlap. And if those overlap in like such a way that we both are getting what we want at the end of it, that's awesome, because that means I've found a really good partner who's going to believe in my project because we're kind of moving in the same direction.
Okay, what technology is on the horizon, either for developers or players, that you look most forward to embracing?
There's a couple. A lot of them are kind of like gated in an interesting way. One of the things that we're most passionate about is accessibility and player accessibility, and not in the like color blindness accessibility side of things, but more in the, I want people who aren't necessarily familiar with games to understand that games are so much bigger than what they think. They're not all first-person shooters. They're not all um, the free-to-play mobile stuff that they see. It's not all Minecraft. There's so many different options out there. And to sort of get through these boundaries that are in place, there are things like Apple Arcade, which are taking premium big games to a very wide audience and making it work on the devices that they have. But there's also some other things that are sort of on the horizon. There's streaming services, which are currently they're gated behind, our own ISPs. But eventually, when all of us get fiber, we actually will be able to access like the cloud for like, you'll still have to buy your game, but you won't have to have this crazy high-powered machine in order to play them. And I think that's really cool because that gives access to people in all walks of life. As long as you have the internet, you can play. And we're humans, like our whole evolutionary existence is about play. And like, not just with toys, not just with our interactions, but like our modern day version of play is in games. And I would love to see the access for games and all types of games kind of spread out, and that there's like a hardware gate for a lot of people on Earth. And it really does have to do with like the internet. The internet's not quite fast enough for most of us.
Well, we hope we'll get there. Bekah Saltsman, co-founder and CEO at Finji. If somebody wants to connect with you, Beck, maybe they want to find out more about your work, how can they do that?
You can find me online. If you follow any of my company Twitters, which are at Finji or FinjiCo or at Overland_game. Those are my games, or you can literally just follow me. It's Bekah Saltsman. And then www.finji.co.
All right. Thanks again. And if you guys want to find more of my interviews, you can find me right here on ZDNet or Tech Republic, or go to tonyahall.net. Thanks for watching.